So the point of moving forward is a point of integration. Like it's that old, it's like in Star Wars, same thing. It's like, what does the enemy teach us about ourselves? I watched the Star Wars recently where Luke's got to go in the weird thing, and he ends up, defeating the ghost Darth Vader
himself.
And it's really himself. And I mean, that's what spiritual languaging teaches us, is that, and back to what I wanted to try to address, is propaganda works on the idea that they're going to touch something in you that you're afraid of. It's fascinating sometimes to read people's comments. I mean, there'll be something that very much concerns them, and it breaks down in these sort of interscene squabbles that don't have anything to do with the thing that was being talked about, because they actually can't deal with the issue that's being presented.
That's why they'll distract off into some conspiracy that has no basis in reality, instead of the trillion-pound elephant hiding right there in the room. Now, I just hope that viewers out there realize that you have inherent power. I think that's what Billy was saying earlier. It's the basic bedrock spiritual things, our conscience, our programming, things we know are true. That's what threatens the system.
I think most people have a hard time understanding it, let's call it its highest levels. Like if we went out the door or down the street and went to the Burger King and we pulled somebody out from behind the counter, I think they'd probably have a hard time believing that their senator or their president or whatever are inherently evil. Whether you or I could make an argument for better or worse, right? But when they see things in their own communities, when they see things up close that really resonate with them. For example, the woman that you had on, because she was from my area, about where they forced the RF, the smart
meter on her house.
Yeah, that's, I grew up basically 10 miles away from where she lives. That's the kind of stuff that people go, well, wait a second,
And she's videotaping on her own property, the police without warrants putting a meter that dials in and spies on you on record.
Mm-hmm.
On record. And then she and her neighbors are arrested. Look, my crew can't hand out our magazines downtown. They write us tickets.
That's what I'm saying. That's the kind of thing that people can relate to. So when you start to connect those experiences, if they have a perspective by which they can start to see where they can do something about it, that's the difference. And I think activism is a weird thing. I mean, you can stand up at your local council and, like that woman said, they'd formed this organization, and for 2 years they'd met with city council. And obviously, I think in the story that she told, the city council had accepted some $11 million from the government, and they weren't going back on that decision. So she's basically facing a brick wall, no matter how realistic her arguments were. So there's an inherent negative. She can't get anywhere. She doesn't want this thing in her house. But that video that they made was very, very powerful. That's a real thing that
I've seen millions of times. No.
Right. That's what I'm.
So what is the system going to do? We should talk about this.
Well, ultimately, if we look at history, they're going to try to either shut down alternative media, or they're going to try to control it, or they'll create their own Alex Joneses. I look at it from the intuitive point of view, which is you have to trust something above yourself, whether it's your own familial intelligence or God or whatever you believe in, or if you don't believe in anything.
There is a power to turning loose and believing in it actually does work.
Like, look, I've been on stage, I don't know, 2,500 times, and I faced, people throwing stuff and all. If you go up there waiting for it, in a way it almost kind of invites it. Now, that doesn't mean I'm weak if I go up on stage not anticipating it, but you have to sort of be, it's sort of like the Jedi Knight thing. You got to be prepared, but you don't walk around in a state of anxiety. If you look at these systems of propaganda, they're predicated on being able to check against your fear and or anxiety, right? Like government. Oh, the government's going to rescue you now. Don't worry. But then every time you turn around, the government's churning up this fear. And it's weird because when Obama came out in an interview recently, said, "Oh, our debt's sustainable for 10 more years. Don't worry." But then he was just on TV last week going, "We're going to lose firefighters and the world's going to go to hell." And you know what I mean?